Welcome to the Jersey Justice Podcast, featuring your hosts, attorneys Gerald Clark and Mark Morris.
All right.
Hi.
Wow, I don't even need to introduce you. You're already just jumping in there. I think that's our first just hi off the bat, which is great. So far, we've had on here, Oscar, we've had Marines, we've had former New Jersey Supreme Court justices. Mm-hmm. Last, we had a radio DJ. Ooh. But I'm going to be honest, I think this is one of the ones I'm most excited about. We have, and I clarified this, an astrophysicist in training who's currently a student at USC, right?
Yes.
And USC, University of Southern California.
Correct.
USC.
Yes.
Which is, I see you got a little Trojan sticker on there. So it's funny, before we started, this always happens. We started talking, I want to say, contemplating the universe, and I don't mean that in a tongue-in-cheek way, but I was like, you know what, let's just start with your LinkedIn description because I feel like that scratches the surface, and your about me on LinkedIn is mathematician in training and cosmology researcher, narrative designer and game artist, and tap dancer.
Yeah.
What do you think? Does that sum it up?
I think that's a lot about me. Mathematician in training, I'm a math major. Cosmology researcher, I work under Dr. Vera Glosovic of USC. Narrative designer and game artist, I do some work in video games and physical games. I either am a writer, so that's narrative designer, or a game artist where I create all the art, digital, physical for the box or the characters. And then tap dancer, I did competitive dancing as a kid. And then I went off to college and didn't really do that anymore, but I found a club for tap dancing at USC, and now I'm the president of it.
Oh my God. And missing from here, I think you're a long distance runner,
yes.
Right? And you also play, is it flute?
Yes, I play the flute and the piccolo.
Just for fun, or does it happen to be in the marching band for this major university?
So I did it just for fun throughout elementary school. Starting in third grade, we played the recorder, so started playing the flute after that, and then on and off, played it on and off throughout high school. And then COVID happened, and I wasn't able to visit SC, but the marching band crashed our welcome Zoom video, and I was like, they're so cool. So I kind of joined the marching band on a whim, and then I played flute my freshman year, and then we had a whole bunch of seniors graduate in my section, and so they were like, you are going to try out for the piccolo. So I did, and then I passed auditions, and I've been playing the piccolo ever since.
So on top of all these other things, when we talk about USC marching band, you're like, USC is a bowl game tonight, right?
Yes, correct.
If you were in school, would you be going out at halftime, walking around, marching around?
If I were in California right now, I would have gotten on the bus last night and drove to Vegas with the rest of the team.
Wow. How's that feel? I mean, how big's USC's stadium? What do they hold, like 80, 90,000 people, something crazy like that?
I don't know the number, but it's huge. It's one of the biggest stadiums in collegiate sports.
How'd that feel when you first walk out there to...
It is crazy. We do our traditional pregame where we form the letters USC and we play our fight songs, fanfare, Chibit Choi, fight on, and the feeling of wearing the traditional Trojan helmet with the uniform and the cape and stepping off from the sidelines onto the field was one of the coolest feelings I think I've ever felt.
So what made you gravitate, again, space pun, what made you gravitate towards USC? What led you to go there?
So on a totally superficial level, I love the weather there. It's so nice, and I'm someone who gets cold a lot, so California weather really works out for me. Also, just on a superficial level, I have asthma, and there's so much less pollen there than there is here, so my allergies have been doing great since I've been out there. But for the real reasons, I knew I wanted to get into astronomy, and all the colleges I was looking into, I was applying as a physics major, and they didn't really have an astronomy focus. And so I was really considering at the end Gonzaga University in Washington, the University of Southern California, which is where I am now, and then UCSD, California, San Diego. And Gonzaga was great. It just didn't really have the astronomy program I was looking for, and that was the same thing for San Diego.
Okay. This is going to be one of those things, I think, where I show that I know a little bit about some of the stuff that you're into, but I'm also going to make an absolute fool of myself because I don't know anything about your world. But what led you to pursue this kind of future, this path in astronomy? I think about it seems every kid at some point growing up, at least, some of the nieces and nephews that I've had over the years are like, they love dinosaurs for a time period, and then they love space, and they're like, they got all these books with the planets, and they want to go to the planetarium, and then they move on, and then it's like, oh, sports, and they forget about all that, and they lose that kind of like luster, that like fascination with, the universe. But how'd that stick with you? Were you one of those kids that had that space passion, or did that come later in life? Like, what's your kind of origin story?
I think a bit of both. I think I was always fascinated by space. Like, I remember going to like little painting parties as a kid and would paint space, some horrible solar system that definitely didn't have enough planets to represent our real outside universe. But
is Pluto a planet? Before I cut you off, what do you think? Should it be a planet?
It is a planet, but it's now categorized with a whole bunch of subplanets just based upon its size.
Okay.
Because so it's a subplanet, but that doesn't mean that it's not a planet, just compared to the other sizes. It's more of a, just based upon where it is, it's called a trans-Neptunian object.
Trans-Neptunian, okay. Which is that based on how far away it is, distance-wise?
Yeah, it's outside of Neptune. There's a whole belt of objects and asteroids and things, and just based upon the size of Pluto and its orbit, it's its size and the fact that it really doesn't orbit as regularly around the sun.
So I told you I'd kind of humiliate myself a little bit, telling you how I know space or what I don't know. I learned the order of the planets and a description about them from Blue's Clues. I was home sick one time when I was a kid, and my brother, who's younger than me, was watching the show Blue's Clues. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. It's I think the modern day equivalent of it is Bluey. I don't know if they're related, but every
Bluey.
generation has some blue dog. So my generation, just on the cusp, was Blue's Clues, and I was homesick for a week, and they had like the same episode for 5 days, and it was the order of the planets and like a song. I'm not going to sing it, but.
Was it like the My Very Excellent Mother?
No, it's like, the sun's a hot star, Mercury's hot too, Venus is the bright one, Earth's home to me and you, Mars is the red one, Jupiter's really wide, Saturn's got those icy rings, and Uranus spins on its side, Neptune's really windy, and Pluto's really small. We wanted to know the planets, and now we've named them all. Except now I need to forget about Pluto. So that's actually the extent of my knowledge of the universe. But you were telling us, so what got you into space and all that stuff, and how you kind of stuck with it and made a pretty awesome kind of journey out of it.
Yeah, so I was always kind of interested into it, as most kids are. And then I remember as a kid just one day being like, wait a minute, that's a real job? I could do that? And then I learned about like physicists and things like that. And then I watched all of the Carl Sagan videos. And I really think that he's one of my biggest inspirations. Also, fashion choice-wise, I was really into blazers, and I still am. So I loved all of his blazers that he would wear in the videos, and just seeing really interesting concepts that he would talk about really impressed me. And I really always liked thinking about like the big picture and the universe, and seeing someone talk about that and be interested in that, and then learning that that was a potential career path kind of got me to where I am now.
I think and you strike me as one of these people as well, that like you can take very complex topics and very complicated things that people can't even really begin to conceptualize and actually be able to articulate them and convey them, which is one of the reasons I'm really excited to have this conversation. Because I think I listened to an audiobook years ago. It was like Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's like astrophysics for people in a hurry.
Yeah, love him too.
Okay.
I'd say he's the modern day Carl Sagan.
Really impressive. Like, and he's, again, very mainstream. I think at one point, didn't he have a show on like Fox or ABC or one of those? So I think to be able to do that and, have this conversation is just really, really exciting because there's so much out there and so much going on.
Yeah.
It's like, and again, I don't want to keep talking so much because I want to hear from you, but like, you go to the Grand Canyon or something, or, we went to Glacier National Park a few years ago in Montana, right? Yeah. And you go there and you're like, wow, like this is massive. And you have this like, I don't know, this kind of just basic level of appreciation for how enormous something is and the scale of it. And with like space and the universe, it's almost so far even beyond, I feel like, the average person's conception.
It's so big.
And we were talking too. And like, again, this is silly, but you know this, you live it every day. Like, space is expanding constantly, right?
Yes, correct.
How do you know how fast, like offhand, like what's happening? not to put you on the spot.
If I had to guess, I'd say something maybe along the speed of light, but that also kind of changes depending on which theory you think about, but it is expanding.
And who was it, like Hubble or something? Someone, they're like, all right, we're looking through a telescope at these galaxies and we can actually see that they're moving further and further away.
Yeah, the actual fabric of the universe is stretching, and that's kind of hard to think about, but if you think about the universe on a balloon, so like if you have a balloon before you blow it up and you put like two black dots with a Sharpie next to each other, they're really close. But then if you blow up the balloon itself, those dots didn't change their location, but they get farther away because the actual fabric of the balloon. So you can think about the universe as expanding like that. That's like, they're not physically moving away from each other. It's just the fabric of the universe itself is getting bigger.
It's like, if you ever hear the concept, like, I forget who it is, but some lady is like, oh, it's like turtles all the way down. They're like, oh, the Earth isn't round. We're not orbit. It's just, we're sitting on a giant turtle. It's like, well, what's below the turtle? It's like, oh, it's another turtle. And what's below that? It's like, well, it's turtles all the way down. Like, what is the universe then expanding into?
It depends on your theory. The two theories that I think about, or okay, I guess three theories. There's string theory, which is just that below the smallest atom and quantum particle is a string where everything's connected by strings. And then the theory that I like to think about a lot is like bubble theory, where the universe itself is a bubble that expanded, and it's either expanding into another bubble or the bubble itself is just going to expand and expand. And then those bubbles sit in something that we think about, a box called like a brain. And then, of course, it's the question where it's like, what's outside the brain? But that's where a lot of like the 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional, 11-dimensional physics come into play with strings.
Are you able to fall asleep when you go to bed at night, or do you just lay there thinking about string theory and 11 dimensions and all these crazy concepts?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes I'll just like put on a YouTuber playing through Minecraft and listen to that and try not to think about it.
Because when you do, like, so what's your, and again, I know there's all bodies of science out there, but everyone's, it's like, where do we come from? Where are we going?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on kind of how all this started, like the Big Bang, all that stuff? And
yeah, I think as a cosmologist, which is not to be confused with cosmetologist.
I was going to make that joke early on when you said, the professor you're working under. I was like, that's at esthetician school or,
Yeah, no, but cosmetologists are very impressive. But I do cosmology, which is the study of the universe on a big scale, including its origins and its future. I think as a cosmologist, I have to be very agnostic, where it's just, I don't know what I don't know. And I definitely was raised Catholic. And I think a lot of those things do line up with what I've studied. Like you think about, the Big Bang and like the beginning of the Bible, there's let there be light. But there's just things that do line up, things that don't line up. And I think until we know very specifically based upon science, it's like, I don't know. And I've gotten comfortable in not knowing.
Did you ever hear the concept of Pascal's wager?
I've not.
All right. So I think there's this overlap between like religion, philosophy, and essentially astrophysics, or like contemplating the universe.
Yeah.
Where you probably know, like, is it either punnet or pundit squares? I forget what it is. Punnet?
Yeah.
All right. So it's like, the dominant gene, the recessive gene, or whatever. The concept of Pascal's wager is either there is some higher entity out there or there isn't. Mm-hmm. And it's like the only one where it lines up where it's like, well, you're screwed. It's like where if there is in fact a higher entity, but you don't believe that there's a higher entity, it's like that's the one square where it's like, oh, you're so he's like, I wager that there is because I don't want to be in that one square.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you're kind of absolutely right. Like everything is just faith-based if you are a spiritual person, a religious person. Because as much as we know and as much as we're learning, there's still so many questions. There's probably still so many things that are of course there are things that are being learned like every year, nonstop.
Every day.
Like dark particles. Like,
dark matter. I did a bit of work that my sophomore summer.
What's that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's dark matter and there's dark energy. The reason that we know it exists, okay, so first of all, we can't actually see it, and we just call it like dark matter and dark energy because we can't see it. But the reason that we know it has to exist, something like that has to exist, is that when we look at the equations that we know work, and when we look at data that actually shows us how the universe is expanding and how fast galaxies are spinning, there is not enough matter within a galaxy for it to be spinning as fast as it is, and there's not enough energy within the universe for it to be expanding as fast as it is. So we know there has to be something else causing it. And so we don't know what that is. So it's just been called dark matter and dark energy. And there are potential candidates for what it could be. There are these things called axions. There are these things called WIMPs, which are weakly interacting massive particles. And that's a whole big field of study. So it's kind of scary. You're like, what is it, dark matter? But it's like, we know that there is something. It doesn't interact with the standard model of particles that we have, but there has to be something for the universe to be existing as it is.
So, and as a mathematician, you know, as being in the role you're in, to discuss that, or I don't want to say prove it, but like you do math, you'll do a formula, right? It's like in the movies where you see there's this giant chalkboard and someone's I picture Interstellar, which
that's a perfect example.
Where it's like, you know, a whole room of a chalkboard and she throws the papers up. Spoiler alert, she figures out the formula, throws them up, and is like, I got it. Probably Eureka.
Yeah.
But that to me, you know, we're attorneys here. Obviously, this is the Jersey Justice podcast. I was an English major, and something I loved about that was, number one, I didn't have to do math. But number two was you just make your argument. Like you read something and you're like, I interpret it like this, and, you know, I'm going to make my argument as to why I interpret it this way. And you weren't necessarily right or necessarily wrong. There's a ton of gray area there. Mm-hmm. But I used words to do that, which I'm very comfortable with. So to prove something that essentially like you're talking about, or to even, I guess, show the concept of dark matter, you're up at the chalkboard doing like mathematical proofs, right?
Yes.
That's so crazy to me to have numbers and math, you know, formulas translate to the concept of like an idea. Mm-hmm. Like how do you feel about that? Can you explain that to someone like me, like how that works, where you're like, all right, I'm going to write all these numbers, and then from that, I'm going to have an articulable like point I can make?
Yeah, so most proofs that I work with don't actually have to deal with numbers. They deal with more of concepts. So I just took a class this past semester. It was abstract algebra.
Fail.
Okay, so the main idea, it talks about groups and rings, which are these objects where, okay, so you know how A times B equals B times A?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, that's not always true, because in the math that most of us use, that's called like an algebra, that's where A times B equals B times A always holds. So you're taught that because 97% of the time when you do math, you will be dealing in that realm of algebra, in that group where A times B equals B times A. And this class is studying groups of math where that doesn't always hold.
Wow. Oscar's nodding his head over there because I know he's way smarter than me when it comes to that stuff. But he seems to have some understanding of that, but that's fascinating. So you're basically studying the 3% of situations where the truth is not the truth?
Yeah, and so it's dealing with different rules like that. So I wanted to bring that up because a lot of the times proofs will be not based upon numbers, but we'll say, okay, we have this set, and it's a portion of all of the real numbers, and then it's intersected with this other set. Do these things hold within it? And if it holds, what can we classify that group as? So then the proof goes by, okay, there's a list of things we know a group is when this happens, when this happens, when that happens, and you check all of these qualifications. And then if you can check all the qualifications, you say, oh, this holds, and then since you know it holds, you're able to apply it to other things. And then from there, like I was saying, the numbers don't really come in. That's afterwards. You say, once you know, like, this set intersected with this other set fits this definition, then you can start plugging numbers in because you know it follows all of these other rules.
Were you one of those kids, and we talked about this beforehand, like were you one of those kids where like, you know, you do a math problem in elementary school and you just like, no, I get it, it's obviously this. You're seeing the numbers, like, you know.
No, I was okay at math, and then like 3rd grade, 4th grade hit, I was awful. Like I was so bad. It was long division. And I would just go home and cry because I could not do it. My aunt was an elementary school teacher. I went over to her house, and she tried to help me. And I had to go to, like, this tutoring place, Mathnasium. I was really not getting it.
Wow. Were you thinking, when did you know? You were like, hey, I want to, do this astrophysics stuff. That's the route I want to go. How early on did you know that?
It took me till like high school. I thought I wanted to be an engineer.
Okay. When you're struggling with math, like hitting these walls, or you're like, forget it, I'm not doing astrophysics, I'm not going to be an engineer, I hate numbers, or what happened? Like, what was in you that you were like, no, I'm going to work through this, I'm going to get this right?
Honestly, a lot of just, it's called growth mindset, and you hear people kind of like roll their eyes at it, but that really helped. So Mathnasium, they really helped me because I consider myself a very creative person, and they helped me with the idea that math does usually have one answer, but there's a million ways that you can come to that answer. So factoring was a huge problem for me because my teacher was like, you just kind of look at it and then you see what it factors into, and that did not work for me. So I learned something called the X method at Mathnasium, where you specifically draw an X and then you use a little graph to figure it out. So realizing there were different ways to come to the same conclusion, really I was like, whoa. And then from there I went to high school, I went to Trinity Hall, and I really thought I wanted to be an engineer because I liked putting things together. And then I realized that engineering-wise, I didn't want to go into aerospace, which is where you build the rocket ships. I wanted to be more of someone who creates the equations. So then I went and majored in physics. And then at USC, I realized that I liked the theories of physics, but I wanted to do more of the computational, not computer computational, but like manual computational. So I went and changed my major to math, but I kept an astronomy minor.
And you're something called a NASA ambassador. What's that?
Yeah, so that's a volunteer position with NASA, unpaid, but you have to apply in and you kind of do all of this training to make sure that they know that you are able to accurately represent information. And then it's kind of like a grassroots campaign where you go out to local schools and communities, totally free to, one, make sure that you are helping NASA to spread accurate information about space and like their newest missions. And then two, they really want people to be inspired to think this is something that they could do, to like provide representation that like, oh, I'm from Tinton Falls, New Jersey at this one school, but this really cool person came and talked to me, and now I want to go and look at that, to trying to help the ball get rolling, to can help the next generation.
So, and I see you, like, again, looking at some of your resume things, you're talking about NASA's Artemis plan.
Yeah.
What's that?
That is their plan to take us to the moon.
Nice.
Yeah.
Back to the moon, right?
Back to the moon.
Do you know something that the public doesn't know? No. Just joking.
No, I wish I did, but I do have access to a little NASA database of some more specific information, but it's just information on the plans that's been released to the public, just in a bit more of an organized way because I'm an ambassador.
What are your thoughts to the people that say the moon landing was staged?
It makes me so sad.
Stanley Kubrick in a studio, and
it makes me so sad. I think people have come up with interesting theories as to why and things like that, but just looking at all of the math, like you've seen the movie and like Hidden Figures and things like that, there are just so many influential men and women and people that put pen to paper and spent years of their life doing the math. So I feel like when you say that it didn't happen, you're really discrediting a lot of their life's work. You
know what's funny? That's actually an excellent point. I always just thought of it as like, again, like conspiracy theorists, and it's just globally, a dig at the government of saying, oh, hey, we faked this. But you're right. Like, especially you doing what you do, there's people that devoted their lives to like doing the calculations and everything to figure out like how to get us there.
Yeah.
Let alone the people who, actually flew there and walked out onto the moon.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's funny. I never thought about like the actual people that went into it, aside from just the concept of the government during that time period.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely was government mandated with the USSR at the time and trying to beat Russia. But the way that all of those scientists were able to develop technology so fast that had never been created before was insane.
Crazy. The whole space race age. It's really probably a fascinating time.
Yeah.
So what else are your space passions, like things you're really interested in about space?
I'm really into the cosmic microwave background right now.
Cosmic microwave background. That sounds like a hostess treat or something.
So it's shortened to the CMB, and if you Google it online, you'll get this interesting oval with a whole bunch of dots, and it is the background radiation from the Big Bang when the universe first happened. It's like the background. Like whenever you point a satellite or something up into space, you'll always get a little bit of excess radiation, and that's
still left over from the Big Bang?
Yeah, you can think of it kind of like, you know, when a firework goes off, it like explodes and then you see it in the air for a second.
Sure.
And then it like falls down, etc., because there's gravity. If there weren't gravity, explosion happens and the firework goes off and you can see that, and then it would keep expanding forever. So you can think of after the Big Bang happened, we got like the explosion and then it continues expanding. So the cosmic microwave background is just literally, we call it cosmic because it's space. Microwave is because it's the type of radiation. They're like microwaves as compared to nanowaves or other small. And then it's in the background because it's just always there and you're able to study it and we're able to detect it. And by studying it, there's things called anisotropies, which is a really fancy way of saying weird stuff.
See, that's what I love about this field is it's like there's what you talked about, so technical, so like into it, and then you're like, there's just some goofy stuff out there that we're not really sure about.
Yeah, so the cosmic microwave background, we get a map of it, and the same way that we know the Earth is a sphere, but we get it as like...
Allegedly. Again, some people...
Okay, the Earth is a sphere, but we look at a map of the whole Earth usually as a... what's it called?
A globe?
Yeah, a globe, but like a two-dimensional, it's flat. It's a big oval, that's what I was looking for. The same way we know the universe is expanding and it's going out, we see it expanding from our perspective. Even though we're not at the center of the universe, we're able to look at the outside universe as a two-dimensional map oval as well. So there's a whole bunch of dots everywhere. There's some more radiation in other areas, there's some less. And the two things that we study when we're looking at the cosmic microwave background are polarization, which a magnet you think about, there's the positive, the negative, and then temperature, where it's higher temperature, lower temperature. And any differences across the whole picture that we're looking at cause the universe to become the way it is now. So by studying why is it a bit more of a positive polarization here and more concentrated negative here, that can tell us about why the universe looks the way it does now.
And when you say looks the way it looks now,
yeah,
like the fact that you can even have like a conceptual idea of like this is a map of the universe to any degree to me is just absolutely mind-blowing.
It's so cool. It's hard to wrap your head around, but I think comparing it to the fact that like, oh, we have the Earth as a globe, and then when we flatten it into a 2D map, that really helps considering the universe. I mean, it's hard to think about the universe as a globe because we think of it as like this just space that's weird. But if you think about it as it started with the Big Bang and it exploded and it's continually going out in all directions, if you kind of think of it as a sphere that's continually getting bigger like a balloon, then it helps to think of it in a 2D map.
So let's all the way back. So tell everyone about the Big Bang. Like, again, because I assume we never really quite know who the audience is. Sometimes it's attorneys. Sometimes it's just members of the public. For this, it might be people who are interested in the type of work that you do. But for, I guess, the general people out there, like, what is the kind of basic description of the Big Bang, what happened, and your understanding of it?
Yeah, so I don't have a specific quantum years in mind. It's been a few years since I took a baseline cosmology class, but the Big Bang is the start of the universe, and all of these particles, very, very small, very, very compact, all together, exploded out at the speed of light and started creating our universe. So you think of just the stories where it was like at first there was nothing, and then there was light. And we say at first and then there was light because that's when the speed of light and things like that were created. And things started expanding out. There was a whole bunch of primordial soup. There wasn't light at first, and then there was light. Galaxies started forming, and you think about the balloon example again. Everything was there, except it started expanding. So it was close to each other, but then the fabric of space itself got pulled apart. So all of those things got spread apart.
And isn't it, there's something going on now, I think I remember reading about, you'll know way more about it, but isn't there like a particle accelerator or something going where they're trying to see if they can collide two particles? I'm looking at Oscar, maybe I'm making this up. For some reason I thought it was in France or something like that.
There's a whole bunch of a few particle colliders around the world. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do right now. I think you're maybe talking about CERN, which is in Europe, but they're constantly working for subatomic physics, trying to really fast have particles hit each other to study the Standard Model. That's how we found out about the Higgs boson.
And is that what happened with the Big Bang? Was it two particles collided, or was it just like you said, like a group of material packed in, and finally it like reached its boiling point essentially? That's a poor example, and then just everything shot out.
I would say closer to the second example, but it's kind of hard to think about because like at first there kind of was nothing and then there was. So the way that we're able to conceptualize that now is by using quantum mechanics, where
Let's get right quantum.
So in quantum mechanics, it says that anything could happen. There's just the probability based upon it. So we live in a universe where we exist in a world where things are very big. So if I hurl myself at this wall, we say I'm not going to go through it because we've seen things like that happen. But based upon quantum mechanics, there is a probability that I could go through the wall. It's just that because probability-wise it is so incredibly low, we just say that can't happen.
In law, there's a big thing where we say anything's possible.
Yes.
Like with personal injury, with what we do, it's probability. With law, it's 51% more likely than not.
Yeah.
So like if you throw yourself at that wall, yeah, it's possible you're going to break through the wall, but is it probable that you will? No.
So the way it works is quantum mechanics deals with probabilities and sizes of particles. So the bigger particles are, the less likely strange things are going to happen, which is why people are like, oh, quantum mechanics is really weird because a lot of things happen and we exist at a big size for particles. But the smaller and smaller and smaller you get, the higher those possibilities happen. So when you think about the beginning of the universe, it was so small. So those probabilities were a lot higher. And so the chance for the universe, the Big Bang happening, just it's starting and going off and coming into existence from nothing, it was very high probability.
Wow. It's still just an absolutely unbelievable concept.
Yeah.
And then the fact, too, that that's all of the matter in the known universe exists from that.
Yes.
You and I sitting here, you know, what we're made of.
It is insane to think about.
Yeah. I'm going to start to get like too trippy if I get it. But I always think about that stuff. Like that, not always, but that happens. And now I'm standing here moving my mouth after neurons in my brain are firing off. You're listening to me, understanding me, and when you step back, we're just on a rock that's spinning around, floating around in the middle of space.
Yeah. Probability-wise, like, the fact that any of us exist is insane. You think about, like, the Goldilocks theory, where it's like Earth very specifically exists close enough to the sun that we get enough sunlight, but far enough away that we're not burned, because you have the first planets, like Mercury is... You think it would be the hottest because it's close to the sun. No, it's the closest to the sun, so it's all burned away. Venus is the hottest because it's not close enough that it no longer has an atmosphere, but it has such an atmosphere that the greenhouse effect goes really, really, really hot, and anyone would be like burned to a crisp or like boil there. And then not only that, but we have the magnetosphere around Earth, which is this thing that protects us. Not only would we worry about the sun, but there are these random things going through space called galactic cosmic rays, which... You think about a lot of times people will get too much radiation from the sun and get like skin cancer, things like that. The magnetosphere protects us from a lot of these galactic cosmic rays. So it's like not only are we the perfect distance from the sun, we also have the magnetosphere, and we have the moon helping us with the tides and things like that. Like the probabilities of all of these things coming into place is very low, but it still is there.
So Jerry usually sits in this chair. He had something come up, and he would ask you this, I think, right off the bat, and I'd be remiss if I don't. So what do you think about other life out there? What are your thoughts on that?
probability-wise, I'd say I would like to say it exists. I think it just doesn't exist in the form that we think of. Like, definitely not little green aliens, even though that would be so fun.
I so agree with that concept. That's kind of my exact thinking as well, is that, like you said, from a probability standpoint, I saw something the other day on like Instagram that's like, oh, the amount of galaxies is the same as like the number of grains of sand and like all the beaches or whatever. I don't know if that's right, but it's some insane, metric of how many galaxies even exist. And like, you think about how many galaxies we actually even know about and can see, and it's like you just do the probability. If it's a 1 in a trillion chance, all right, well, that's probably enough. But the life isn't the concept that like we have of like, oh, you've got skin and bones, or
I think if it's carbon-based life like we are, it probably is going to be some like amoeba or something very, very small like that. But if you've seen Star Trek, there's that episode where they go and find silicon-based life. I think that if there is intelligent life out there, it's probably not going to be carbon-based. It's going to be life as we don't know it, which is why astrobiology as a field is so confusing and so hard, because you have all of these things where we know life exists because of this, and this. And so we're looking for that on Earth, and not on Earth, outside of Earth, on all of these exomoons and all of these moons of other planets, and we find things that represent or are similar to Earth life, but then we have to think, well, what if there's life based upon other things? We just know life as we know it, and it's such an interesting thing to think about.
I've seen stuff too. It's like, I mean, it could be a computer script like floating around, or it could just be theory that like is out there that, technically is life. So what do you think about, a lot of people think, oh, I've seen UFOs or like all that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, UFO itself just stands for unidentified flying object. So if someone says they see a UFO, it's like, yeah, you saw something and you don't know what it is.
There's a drone over the beach right now.
Yeah, that is a UFO. I think people really signify when they say UFO, they mean like an alien. Yeah. So even if I say, oh, I saw a UFO, like they did just see something they don't know. Nowadays, there's like the whole UAPs thing that came out a few years ago by the government, which is they knew people whenever anyone says UFO, even though it just means unidentified flying object, they have it so closely tied to like an alien. They were like, we need a new word, new acronym. So there is UAPs, which is like unidentified aerial
projectile
phenomena, something like that. New acronym, and it's just a whole list. It's once again just something that the military and government has recorded seeing, and they don't know what it is. But there were these instances where the military and all of these very high up officials recorded seeing these flying objects moving way faster than wind resistance should allow. I don't know what that is. Based upon, people were like, oh, maybe it's another foreign government. Based upon the technology that we have and the physics that we have at this moment, I don't believe it could be another government, just because it went against speeds of wind resistance that should not be possible.
So what do you think? Have we been visited by aliens?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's another one of those things.
Yeah, I just think it's saying like it's an unidentified aerial phenomena, like that's what it is and we don't know.
This is now just like for my own edification, but hopefully it's interesting to other people too. But like, so the concept of the speed of light, that's the fastest that anything can travel, right?
Yes.
Is that, can you explain that? Like, how is that? How will we ever pass that? Is there a way to ever pass that? Or is the speed of light the idea that like the time it takes you to actually see something, even if it gets there like instantaneously for light?
Yeah, so the speed of light, you can think about, it's like, what's the letter C in equations? Like 3 point, I just have this memorized. Okay.
You're talking about for like E equals MC squared?
Yeah, things like that. So the speed of light, if you just are in a room that's dark and you flip on a light switch, and it seems like the light instantly turns on. It's faster than the speed of sound, but they both are. You can think of them very comparable just because they're very fast. But the speed of light, interestingly enough, from like Newtonian and Einstein physics is one thing that we've learned is stable in the universe. Like if you think about relativity and things like that, things go faster, things go slower depending on your perception, but the speed of light we learned cannot be changed. And that has to do with the fact of just observations and equations. And if you've seen the movie Interstellar,
love that movie.
It is such a great movie.
Love Interstellar.
That's where it's interesting. Like you're like, why can't you go faster than the speed of light? It's because if something were to reach the speed of light, time would stop for that object or person, just based upon the laws of physics and the way that the universe as itself exists as an entity.
So you're saying if we can time travel, we can go faster than the speed of light? I know you didn't just say that. I'm just trying to...
Time traveling is tricky because it has to do with the speed of light. If we were ever to time travel, like there was someone who's like technically gone like 0.3 seconds into the future just because they were like orbiting in space for a certain amount of time. So there's like the whole twin paradox where two twins, one travels like a fourth of the speed of light and then comes back, and one twin is younger than the other twin due to relativity. It's really weird stuff. But time traveling really could only be not time traveling like we see in the movies where like going back into the past and then coming back and you're the same age. It's more like when you go to really intensive gravity areas, gravity gets weird and you're going very fast or very slow, and your frame of reference is different than someone else's frame of reference. Got it.
I am thinking of Interstellar.
Yeah, so an example to think about, I like thinking about, is a black hole. So, do you know what event horizon is for a black hole?
You said event horizon?
Yes.
The point where the light does not return?
Yes.
Yeah!
So the event horizon is if you were looking at a black hole, if you can imagine this ring around it, mind you, it's not just a ring like Saturn, like it's like a full like sphere around it, but we call it the event horizon. As soon as anything, anyone, any light passes this ring, it can never go out of a black hole again. It's going to go in.
Because the force of gravity?
Yes.
Wow.
So the way it works is you think about at the event horizon, from there on, gravity kind of reaches infinity. So that's important for this explanation. So there's a person in a spaceship far away enough from the event horizon, but close enough to see what's going on.
Okay.
And then there's an astronaut that's floating towards the black hole.
Okay.
The person who's floating towards the black hole themselves will see themselves like float into the black hole, and then they'll like eventually die. Mm-hmm. But if you are the observer far enough away, watching the guy float into the black hole, as he gets closer and closer, you will see time for him slow down. Like he will start moving slower, and then you will see him freeze at the event horizon because gravity is very close to infinity at that point. And so he is just stuck there forever from your point of view.
If you're just listening to this, my mouth is just hanging open thinking about it. Wow. That's so, again, something I remember at least about Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second. Is that right?
Meters per second squared.
All right, my bad. Damn. Darn it.
I got points off on a test for that. So
for not putting the squared?
Yes.
Wow.
This is the velocity versus acceleration. I get it. It's if you make a mistake like that on like a big equation for something like that, something could go wrong. But I was like, I got the number right. But I understand, Mr. Scott.
Mr. Scott, if you're listening, I hope you corrected that grade. All right, so 9.8 meters per second squared.
Yes.
For gravity here on Earth. Black hole close to infinity?
Yeah, we say, have you ever heard singularity?
Yes.
So not in terms of like tech and AI, where it's like the singularity is supposed to be where AI gains like full intelligence, etc. The singularity we think of as like the center point of a black hole, and that would be where gravity reaches infinity.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So going back to the idea of like space as like, okay, you can think of space as like a fabric. Uh-huh. People say, oh, the fabric of space. Where there's gravity, something goes down more. Like there's more density, more mass. So if you have like a flat, like someone's holding a piece of fabric, if you put a ball in the center, the ball will droop down on the fabric and the fabric will droop down. The fabric of space itself morphs depending on how dense objects are. So for a black hole at the singularity, it is so dense it will go like all the way down, and that's why people, when they're thinking about like what's it called, like wormholes through space, the whole idea is if we could connect the fabric of space, take one other end, and have them very closely grabbed together for a second, that's how you could quickly jump through space.
Is that in Interstellar as well, or something where he like picks it up and then pokes a hole through it?
Yes, that's the whole thing from Interstellar.
I can't tell you how much I love that movie. This whole podcast is actually a plug for Interstellar.
It is such a wonderful movie, and actually until we got the pictures of the black hole, I say pictures in quotations because it's more of like data and we translated it into an image we can look at. But until we had that, the black hole they show, I think it's Gargantua, the animation they do of it until we got the picture was like the closest, the best version of like a black hole simulation.
Wow. And I don't know if I read this somewhere, maybe I heard it from you before when we were talking. So a black hole and a wormhole are not the same thing?
They're not the same thing. Some people think because a black hole at the singularity point, it reaches infinite gravity, that a black hole at the center of it might be a wormhole because of the idea of a black hole going all the way down. Like maybe it goes all the way down and then shoots over to another point of space, which is kind of what happens in Interstellar. But we know, so there's a really fancy word for what happens to an object or person if they were to pass through a black hole, because you would die. It's called spaghettification. You would get stretched into a noodle of spaghetti. So the way it works is that the gravity of a black hole is so intense, it would be pulling more on your feet than it would on your head because it goes so quickly from minimal to very strong that you would get stretched out. So if you're standing on Earth, we feel the same from our feet to our head, but there's a very, very slight, more intense pull of gravity on your feet than on your head, just because your feet are closer.
Got it.
So at a black hole, the gravity is so intense that when you would be floating in, you would literally be just pulled apart.
What do you think about simulation theory ideas? And again, we're jumping around. I'm hitting you with all the things I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid theory to think about. I mean, one of my favorite movies is The Matrix, and I think computing at this point has gotten so intense, and things like deja vu are interesting to think about. Again, I'm like very agnostic about things where I don't know, and I really don't like to say that like I think something is whatever unless like I know for sure. But I really like thinking about it as a theory, just like the universe in a sandbox that was created.
Can I tell you a joke I heard one time?
Please.
It's the agnostic dyslexic contemplated the existence of a dog.
That's beautiful. That's really quite beautiful.
But sorry. So anyways, so simulation theory, again, the little I know about it is the idea that we're actually all just a simulation and we're some alien life forces little game where, if you watch a show like Black Mirror or something where it's like, all this time will pass by and our civilization ends, our world ends, all that. And they're like, all right, reset, let's try it again. And that's just happening over and over in all these different simulations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's plausible.
It's one of those things. It's like, you can be agnostic about that too. Like you don't know. Like,
have you heard of brain in a vat theory?
No, but I think I like it, and tell me about it.
Yeah, so that is that like you're a functioning human being and everything. And it's similar to simulation theory, but it's like you yourself are kind of in a simulation where it's like you actually are just a brain in a vat that's connected to something, and you're going through your life like in a simulation, but you as a physical entity are just a brain in a vat. It was one of like the early theories by philosophers. I forget who it was, but the idea that like you exist only as like you see the world around you.
All very Matrix as well.
Oh
kind
yeah,
of the
they're
idea that,
so trippy to think about.
I watched actually all of the Matrix movies kind of recently. I'd seen the first one, and they stand up.
They're incredible, and the color scheme and the set design is great.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. Oscar, how are we doing on time with the cameras?
We're pretty good. We're only 50 minutes in.
All right. So we've jumped around a lot. I've asked you a lot of just kind of like general questions and things. So I'm picturing you now going into a classroom at USC where, you get the syllabus and you're like, all right, we're going to be talking about wormholes or black holes or whatever. Like, what's that experience like? Like, how do you like USC?
I love USC. Not only have I met some of my best friends there, just like through my classes in the marching band, I live with a whole bunch of my friends now in a shared house off campus. But the classes are great. They really challenge me. Sometimes I don't like that. A lot of the times I don't like that. But I just have to remind myself that I can do it. Because I've never been someone who can just pick up material very fast. And I like to think of myself as someone who's gotten to where I am because I don't give up. I've gotten some awful grades. I have cried over grades. I've gotten C's. And it does not feel good. But just remembering that I want it and that I can do it and I have the capability to do it. Like, we have something in marching band called Figure It Out, where it's like, you don't know what you do. It's like, oh, I'll figure it out. It's like when I'm working on a homework set for math, I'll have like 5 problems in a week to solve all of them. And I'll be like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, it's okay. I will figure it out eventually. And I'll talk to my friends and I'll talk to the teacher. So learning that I can do hard things, even though like that's something you find on cat posters a lot, has been really helpful.
Where's that come from? Because you're a long distance runner too, right?
Yeah.
You did cross country.
Yeah.
Any, you think, relationship between the physical stuff and the mental and the idea of like, I can do this, I can push through this?
Yeah, I think interestingly enough, it probably wasn't a connection in the beginning. Like, I could sit down and work through math and things like that for longer versus I'm like, oh, I'm so tired for cross country. But I like cross country a lot, honestly, because you're running through the woods and it's beautiful. But then it also would be a great motivator because if you're in the middle of the race, you're in the middle of the woods. And it's like,
yeah.
If you want to go home, you got to finish the race to get out of the woods.
I run a good amount. I go for jogs like a couple times a week. But I feel like that is such a kind of, I guess I would say like a personal thing where I can't tell you the amount of times where I'll start to run on the boardwalk. I'll get like 50 feet in. I'm like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not going to run. And then I'm like, all right, I'll go to this stairway. And then I get there and I'm like, I'll go to the, pavilion, get to the pavilion. And I'm like, next thing I know, I'm running the distance I was planning on doing. But it's such an internal fight with yourself. Because there's
so hard.
It's not like you're on a team sport where like, say you're the quarterback and they snap you the ball and you're like, I'm not going to do this. Like, whole play would fall apart. Like, there's no one pushing you. Like, when you
yourself in your head.
Yeah, and I feel like that translates to so much stuff when you're like, man, I'm talking about me now where I'm like, man, I got to get this brief done. I don't really want to work on this, but you just have that like internal thing where like, no, you got to push through, you got to do this.
Yeah.
Like, so what do you think? Cross country too. Like, my brother did cross country. I did cross country for a little bit and then I switched over and played football. Probably should have stuck with cross country.
Yeah.
Never been a big guy.
I mean, cross country is so interesting because it is an individual sport, but it's also a team sport.
You're right.
And that was so interesting because I was always like, so on a team for cross country, there's like 7 runners. And so obviously you want like the fastest people. And it's like golf where like the people who come in first get the least amount of points. I don't remember. I'm sorry, coach. But you get...
Oh, yeah. It makes sense. Like the lower time. Like, yeah.
So the people who get in first in the race will get like the points. And so you want to have fast people. But what it really comes down to is that like your 6th, 7th runners, because it's who will they be able to displace. So I was always like a 6th, 7th runner. So I was fast, but I wasn't like the fastest on the team. So it was always interesting for me because we knew our top runners would always get like awesome times.
Yeah.
And that was what we needed. Like, if we didn't have them, we would not be scoring well and making it to the next meets. But it would really come down to me and I'd be in the end of the race. And my times were important, but what really mattered for me was I see a girl from like shore in front of me and like I need to figure out who's their 7th runner and I need to get in front of her no matter what the time is.
Yep.
So being able to realize that, okay, my times were important, but what really matters is like making sure that I'm in front of someone else was interesting.
Wow. And you went to Trinity for high school?
I did.
I think Jerry mentioned it. I might be wrong on this, but you gave a speech there recently?
Yeah. So I went to Trinity all 4 years. It was great. And whenever I come back for Christmas break, because I do cosmology research, there are a few girls in the computer science club and just in general who are interested in astrophysics. So they invite me to come and just talk about my research. So I talked about the cosmic microwave background stuff I did this past summer.
That's awesome. So how old are you?
I'm 21.
Yeah, that's an unbelievably mature thing to be able to do. Like, I'm going to go back and talk to, these students who are a couple years younger than me and be like, an ambassador for NASA and the things I'm doing, like my studies. That's really awesome.
Thank you.
You're one of those people too that, like, I joked about me on LinkedIn. It's like you don't sit still too much.
I get so bored. It's so bad.
Yeah.
Coming back, all I wanted for Christmas was a break. But it's like 2 days into break, and I'm like, I need to do something right now.
I think that's a common theme of, I won't speak for Oscar, but I know when, like, Jerry and I sitting here, it's the same thing. Like, Jerry will go to Puerto Rico sometimes. I used to go up to Vermont a good amount, and I'd be like, this is great. Just relax, ski, the wilderness. And then 2 days into it, I'm like, all right, I got to work. I got to do something. Like, and it's a shame. Like, I kind of wish it's one of those things where it's like a catch-22. Like, you wish you didn't have that drive, but you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't have that drive.
Yes.
So, you ever run around the USC campus?
Yes.
What's that like?
It's nice. Just the outside of the campus itself. It's about like a mile loop. So some days I'll just be like, I'll get like the zoomies like a dog or something. I'm like, I need to go do something. So I'll just do a lap around campus. But then besides that, a lot of the, there's the Coliseum. So I can go and run a lap around the Coliseum. And then
that's the stadium, right?
That's the stadium, yeah. It's gorgeous. Most of the housing in our area is local communities or student housing. So I can just go and run through all of those neighborhoods. And I've compiled a few like 3 mile, 5 mile, 1 mile, 2 mile loops in my head. So I'll be like, how am I feeling today? I'll run back. I'll do the 5 miles. I'll do 2 miles.
It's right in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
Any celebrity sightings since you've been there?
I've seen Olivia Rodrigo on campus.
Oh. Do they film movies?
Yes, they film a lot of movies. Anytime they want to film an Ivy campus, they always come here just because, one, the weather for filming purposes works a lot better with the technology. And then we have that kind of older look.
Like the brick buildings.
And things like that. I don't want to say anything bad about like Ivy universities because they're all very impressive, but they are very old. So a lot of the buildings might have a bit more of like dirt or just things on them.
How dare you?
I'm applying to Ivy universities for grad school. I'm sorry. Just the buildings tend to be a bit older.
Yeah.
Just because of weathering and things like that. So movies typically want things to be like very sparkly, and SC's right around the corner.
Sure.
So like if you've seen Legally Blonde,
it's what inspired me to go to law school.
Yeah, her dorm room is our Bovard Auditorium Stadium.
Oh wow!
They had her just drive down the main avenue of our campus, and then they just put a sign up that said like whatever dormitory she lived in.
Oh, that's so funny.
But they totally take inspiration from all of the actual Ivies. It's just a lot easier to work because we're right by Hollywood.
That's great. And Will Ferrell is like a USC alum, right? You ever see him on campus?
Not in person. I was very upset. It was him and Snoop Dogg. I've missed both. I was so upset.
I'll see stuff where he's like DJing at a party or something.
Yeah. So with the marching band, we get hired for just gigs all the time. And then specifically when there'll be a celebrity coming on, we've also had like Megan Thee Stallion. I missed her and I'm so upset. But we won't be told who it is, but we'll be told, okay, there's a celebrity gig. You're not going to be told who it is at this time, whatever. Always have class, so it's so sad.
Real roll of the dice.
Yeah, so the celebrity will come in. There was a business school event, and Snoop Dogg came in for that. There was just a regular event. It was a surprise. Will Ferrell came dressed as the drum major, and our drum major gave him the sword.
How about Snoop Dogg, by the way, too? I love that he has like been so relevant for so long. He's like announcing at the Olympics. He's in all these commercials.
So great. And
very versatile.
So funny and still so iconic.
He's really involved with USC as well, right?
Yes.
That's awesome. A buddy of mine works for the athletic department at Texas University, where like Matthew McConaughey. Mm-hmm. So he's down on the sidelines. I was getting lunch with friends recently, and one of them was like, "Oh, Matthew McConaughey," like, "Hey, hey, hey." I was like, "That's not his catchphrase." I think it's Fat Albert. I was like, he's all right. But
yeah,
those big schools where there's like celebrities that are around and stuff, I think that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's going to be a cool experience. All right. So I was going through your thing again, on top of, piccolo now?
Yes.
Playing piccolo in the band.
Yes.
Studying astrophysics.
Yes, but I technically have a math major with minors in astronomy and theme entertainment.
You were also, and these were things that I found very interesting. You pitched a concept for an indoor roller coaster following along with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, so that was through my theme entertainment minor. I took a class, big mouthful of words, called Themed Entertainment Design. We actually had a previous Imagineer as our professor, and so the whole point of that class was to practice the idea of coming up with an idea for an attraction from scratch, going through all of the blue sky preparation ideas, and then at the end we got the opportunity to pitch it.
Did you use Roller Coaster Tycoon to design your roller coaster?
No, but my classmates did.
That's great.
My classmates came up with this interesting Hawaiian-based glider coaster, and they used that.
So tell me about the concept with that. Is it the entire Dark Side of the Moon album? That sounds like a long roller coaster ride.
It is, but we cut it to be only clips of the song. We have like an actual demo. It was only 5 minutes.
Do you have this? Like, do you have a link of it or anything?
I don't have it on me. I do have slides of the presentation. It's like 40 slides. But
again, I'm just personally very interested in that.
Yeah, so funny enough, I was sick the day my group was deciding topics, and so something Dark Side of the Moon. I saw a text message. I was like bedridden. I had like flu or something, and I was like, "Oh, moon, dark side. I know astronomy. Okay."
Yeah.
Okay, I listened to like songs from it, absolutely, but I never sat down and listened to it. So I just went in a library and I put my earbuds in and I got a sketchbook and I just listened to the entire album straight through and just drawing ideas. And I was like, oh, like we've got some good ideas for this. So we spent weeks and weeks and weeks talking about how each of the songs make you feel. And we came up with this idea for an attraction. It wouldn't be in a theme park, it would be at an art museum, but it still would be an electric coaster, which is different from like a regular coaster in the sense of it can speed up and slow down. But we wanted it to be, you get to sit in a vehicle and go through these different rooms, kind of like a dark ride, and you hear the song itself, kind of like on Disney's Rock and Roller Coaster where there's like speakers in the back. You get to hear clips of these songs, you see these rooms, and we would partner with local artists to help create different pieces to represent physically what each of the songs makes you feel.
Have you ever heard of something called Meow Wolf?
Yes, we took a lot of inspiration from that.
Have you ever gone to one of those?
I have not.
You should definitely go.
I want to go so bad.
For people that don't know, it's kind of what you're describing minus the roller coaster. You walk in, it's like an interactive environment. There's a ton of artwork and things around. My wife and I went to one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it was like awesome. It was, I think it was around Halloween or something where you're trying to solve this like mystery where people had been like abducted, and you know, you open the refrigerator and you can walk through it and you're in another room. It was really, really cool.
Yeah.
So
things like that where just artists have a really big budget is so fun to experience.
Yeah, it would be like CDs that are all put together to make another image, and like, yeah, that stuff's awesome. So it never got off the ground, the idea?
It did not. I think maybe in the future, our group, I have all of their contacts. We might try pitching it somewhere else again, but we have all the floor plans, all of the concepts, all of our pitching. We've recorded a video of ourselves pitching it, so I think we'll try again soon.
Did you ever do the thing where you watch The Wizard of Oz synced up with Dark Side of the Moon?
Yes.
You've done that?
Yes.
What do you think?
It's incredible.
Isn't it eerie? Like bizarre?
Yes.
What is the one? It's like balanced on the biggest wave or whatever, and she like falls off the fence, like how money hits right as it goes to color.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is beautiful.
I like Pink Floyd a lot, and I think I've just watched the YouTube clips of that.
Yeah.
But still, like, how does someone figure that out? Like, how is someone like, if after the third lion's roar of, you know, Wizard of Oz, you start Dark Side of the Moon, all of these things line up?
I don't know.
I have theories. I think that there's substances involved and some that are now legal. All right, so just to run through again some of the other stuff you're doing before we let you get out of here. So video game work as well. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work in prototyping board games. I also do some work in video games. I have one video game online. There's going to be another one soon. Obviously, it's all group work. This one's able to play on itch.io. It's called How Hard...
Say that again, etch.io?
ITCH.io.
ITCH.
It's called How Hard Can It Be to Deliver a Pizza Now That the World Has Ended? It's
Amazing.
a really long name, but I was hired as a game design intern for the company Indiecade, and the group I was paired with, we were given the task of creating a game, even if it's very low spiel, but it should be to help spread the idea of environmentalism, but specifically at the idea that like things aren't over yet. So the whole concept of this game was that you wake up as a drone and your idea is that you have to deliver pizza, you don't remember what's going on, and then as you're going through this decrepit world trying to deliver this pizza, you start fixing a few things and helping the world.
You said it's about environmentalism?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on kind of where we're headed with that stuff and what we can do to stop where we're headed?
I think it's scary to think about.
Yeah.
I think we still have time to save it. I think a lot of work does have to come from big corporations because absolutely a single person can do things to help. Like a single person recycling does help. But at the same time, a lot of corporations just polluting things makes it a lot harder for the world. So I think a lot of environmental justice has to happen along the way too.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is kind of scary when you think about that, like, again, maybe not the right terminology, but that critical threshold where it's like,
yes,
there is no going back now. You know, the fact that it appears we're kind of racing towards that. And it's kind of like the concept of space and the universe. It's almost too big of a concept for people to comprehend. It seems like to actually meaningfully do something about it.
Yes.
You know, like if there's litter all over your yard and you're like, oh, this is going to become a problem unless it gets picked up. You'd be like, oh yeah, I got to pick this up.
Yeah.
Like if your town is, you know, going to go up in flames unless everybody gets together and, you know, stops the gas company down the street from like polluting, they'd be like, oh yeah, sure. But when it's such a giant concept, I feel like it just gets lost in the shuffle where people are like, oh, you know, I don't know, what difference am I going to make? Or, you know, what can I really do about it? Which is a shame.
It's a shame. It's a hard topic to think about too.
It is. It's not a fun topic to think about, but I think it's an important topic to think about. Well, look, I got to run through again with you just a couple things. Your interest, sci-fi movies, sci-fi books, any recommendations?
The Matrix, obviously one of my favorites. Interstellar is great. Inception's really fun too. And then, of course, I love Godzilla, so all the Godzilla movies. And then on the realm of giant robots fighting giant monsters, Pacific Rim is great.
Are you a Rick and Morty fan?
Yes.
Nice. Any books, any series?
What am I reading right now?
I'm surprised you guys haven't talked about. Did you guys use 2001: Space Odyssey yet?
Hal? I want to talk about AI a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think about?
I think it's difficult, but also great. So as someone who doesn't love coding, but I have to do it as part of my research, even though I'm technically someone who does more of like math equation proofwriting, I do occasionally have to create simulations to test things that I'm working on. Being able, if my code just isn't working and there's a bug and it isn't working, it is so infuriating. And so I'll have at times hundreds of lines of code. And being able to just copy what I have and put it into AI and be like, explain my situation, and it can say, your issue is in line 472, you're missing a comma right here. It is so helpful.
That's something that AI can, wow.
Yes.
Because otherwise, how many hours,
It would take lots of hours. And then also, I think AI is a great tool. I think there's a lot of things we don't know about it. And I also think people think AI can do a lot more than what it actually can do. At this point, AI is more of a system that has been fed a lot of information and it can spit it back out. It's really good at that. I don't think we've reached the threshold for AI actually being artificial intelligence. I think it's more of a system that's been fed the internet and it can spit you back out the internet.
Have you seen the stuff where people are typing in the AI like 2 + 2 = 5? And it's like, no, 2 + 2 = 4. And it's like, no, 2 + 2 = 5. They do it over and over. And finally the AI spits back. It's like, what's 2 + 2? And it's like 5. So it definitely can.
Yeah, it definitely can be incorrect. And it's still learning. It's still a system. But as a tool, being able to use it for coding work can help me find issues. And then also, if I need to find a research paper, I can say, I am researching this. Can you provide suggestions? And then being able to, because it has access to most of the internet, and it's able to comb through the internet very well, being able to use it as another search bar and then go into Google and say, see if this paper actually exists. Because sometimes it makes up papers it thinks could be cool.
Yeah.
But if I'm able to use that as a comb, it is so helpful.
It's funny. In the legal landscape now, there's a big issue, not a big issue, but attorneys relying on AI, like for case citations. Like an attorney got sanctioned for citing a case that AI spit out to them that didn't exist or didn't stand for what he said it standed for. You know, so you stand up in front of a court and you make a representation. You have to be honest about that representation. So what he made was generated from AI and it wasn't accurate. You know, so it's not like you can be like, computer, you're sanctioned for doing that. It's the mouthpiece of it coming out. But yeah, Oscar's cracking up at that. He likes the idea of an attorney getting in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is such a useful tool. I think people think it can do a lot more than what it can. And it's great. It's useful. It's another piece of technology that we're using. But I think people are scared of it because they don't really know what it means or how to use it.
What do you think are some of the things that we're going to see in our lifetimes that are like this sci-fi stuff? I mean, we've got like self-driving cars. I think about like, you know, my grandma was 95 years old, you know, when she passed away. And when she grew up, it was like dirt roads and, you know, oh, wow, this guy got a car and that was a big deal. And in her lifetime, then it's like, it's cell phones. You know, iPods aren't even a thing anymore. But like that technology just took off. Like, what are some of the things you think we'll see technology-wise, maybe even space travel-wise? I know it's a broad question.
I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime, but I do think either on the moon or Mars, we're going to see some settlements. It's probably going to be, hopefully we're not terraforming, even though that is a viable option to create an atmosphere. That would just take a lot of years. I think a more sustainable option is kind of like creating a community and putting like a bubble or something over it and you create an atmosphere in there. I think we're definitely going to get some space colonies.
Yeah, that's good. It's just so wild that, like, you know, sci-fi, books from what, like the 50s, the 60s, the things that are like contemplated there actually come to fruition in certain ways. Yeah. And I'm kind of a nerd with some of that stuff. Like I read this book, Ender's Game, kind of recently. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, the movie's very excellent too.
I didn't even realize there is a movie.
Yes.
Did you ever read the second one?
No. Not as good?
Not as good.
Okay.
Do you know what Ender's Game is?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool concept.
It's devastating at the end.
I gotta watch the movie. I read the second one. He goes to a colony where there's like, I think they're like pigs that are like, you know, sentient beings and all that. And it's kind of goofy.
Yeah.
But it's a continuation of the first one. But again, like, I don't know. I just think it's fascinating how quickly technology's growing, how quickly things are changing. Like, we're learning so much. And, you know, what's the whole idea? Like, the more you learn, the more you know you don't know. The more you learn, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to see, like, what we'll uncover in our lifetimes.
Yeah. Honestly, technology-wise, I hope we get better public transit.
Isn't that insane? Yeah. By the way, that is a crazy thing that, like, there's still gridlock, you know, when you're driving. And you're right, public transit in the United States, like the infrastructure and all that. Have you traveled much, like to other countries or anything, where you're like, you hop on a bullet train or something? Or?
With the marching band, I traveled to Europe. We did a little tour, like Germany, Austria, Czech Republic. And that was really cool. It's great because I actually speak a bit of German. So
of course you do. Of course you throw something like that in there too.
So we would have free time and all my friends would be like, oh, I want Lucy in my group because they speak German. I'd be like, oh, yay, everybody wants to hang out with me. But the way that everything was either walkable or that we could get on like a train to go somewhere and it would bring us to where we need to go was very nice.
Yeah. I commuted to law school. I took a train back and forth from down here and it was like 2 hours on a good day. And you miss a connection or one train's delayed. And it is pretty wild. It is as phenomenal as our country is and all the stuff we do. Great. It's like, come on, like the transportation system. I'm with you.
Yeah.
All right. So any advice to anyone listening out there that, you know, wants to go on the path that you've gone on or?
It's going to be hard and you're not going to want to do it a lot, but get enough sleep. I should have done that my freshman year. so important. Drink your coffee if you're a coffee drinker, and be kind to yourself. You're going to get bad grades, and you're going to feel awful about yourself, but that doesn't define you. What defines you is your passion for wanting to do it. And have fun. Go see a movie, eat popcorn, and have a good support system.
That's awesome. Look, you're a fascinating guest. Again, I'm not crazy older than you, but I'm extremely impressed with how mature you are. You know, the fact that you're sitting here and, you know, have these things that you can say, and how you go back to your high school. And Trinity's, you know, it's an all-girls school, right? Yes. That's in, where's Trinity?
Falls.
Yeah, like that's a pretty prestigious school. Like that's, you know.
I think I got a lot of inspiration and ability to do what I am today from there.
And you pay it back, you know.
Yes.
You pay forward, I guess, whatever the expression would be, by going back there. So look, thanks for everything you do. I think we'll be reading about you in the papers, or maybe when you do your own, you know, Carl Sagan or Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know, little book, not little book, but again, so just thanks for everything. If there's anything you want to plug or anything besides the USC marching band, your video game, everything else you got going on, anything you want to plug?
I guess just a shout out to my favorite math teacher, Claire Devant. I love you. Thanks for teaching me analysis. I'm excited to take real analysis too with you. And then also a shout out to my awesome research advisor, Dr. Vera Glosovic.
All right. Well, Lucy, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.